In this video, we will build a React Native file upload with Supabase storage and Expo. Hey everyone, what's up? This is Simon from Galaxies.dev, and today we're doing a React Native tutorial in combination with Supabase. So Supabase is the sponsor of this video. I've worked a couple of times with Supabase before, and if you haven't used it, I really don't know why. Go check it out. You can get started for free. It offers everything for you to get started with a backend as a service, authentication, file upload, other two things that we're going to use in this video, but there's so much more about Supabase that is everything you really need as a powerful backend for your application. So go check it out and create your free account, and we're gonna implement our file upload using Expo and the latest SDK 49, which just came out. So we're gonna have the Expo router version 2, we're gonna have authentication for the different routes, we're gonna integrate file upload to an API, to the Supabase API, and we finally also built a pretty cool interface for which you can find the code right linked below the video. So go to GitHub or go to the Supabase blog where you can check it out. And now let's dive into the code. Alright, so let's get started with our application, and we're gonna start in Supabase. So you can create a free account if you haven't done so, and then create a new project. I'm gonna start one here. I'm gonna call this video cloud app, doesn't really matter. I'm gonna generate a password. You should take care of noting that. I'm gonna use Frankfurt and create my project. I wanted to do this step right here in the beginning because this takes like 1 or 2 minutes, so we can put this now to the background as it is setting up and focus on our application. So I already started this running the command npx create expo app latest. So I want to use SDK 49. That's currently how you can use it. The name is going to be cloud app, and we're going to use the tabs template also at SDK 49. This is not perfect. I think it contains a few files too much, but we're going to get rid of them in a second. Of course, we need the Supabase JavaScript package. We also need a little polyfill package, array buffer for some base64 transformation, and a little loading overlay because loading overlays are cool and easy to use. And finally, 3 Expo packages. The first one will be used for authentication and handling the session. The other 2 are required for selecting an image and then reading the information from our file system. So go ahead with all of these. And once you got that, you can also create a new .env file. Yeah, we can use a cool env file, just like the cool backend kits. Although, be aware, this is not really like a backend env. We can use it and we don't have to commit it to GitHub and stuff, but the stuff we have in the env that we're gonna load, because we use Expo Public, will be in the bundle of our application. But anyway, the Supabase URL and the ANN key can be used safely. And what a coincidence, the project was just finished. That was actually, well, was it a minute? Maybe. I think Firebase is getting faster. So I'm gonna copy over my Supabase is getting faster. Firebase is only getting slower. I'm copying over my project URL and the ANN key. So both go to my env file, and then we can use them to initialize our client. But before we do that, let's quickly talk about 2 things I want to change in my project. So number 1 is under authentication. We already have by default the email provider enabled. The only thing I want to change is I don't want to confirm my email. I don't really need that setting, so hit save here and disable this. Otherwise you get emailed and the confirmation takes you to the wrong page. So it's a bit more complicated and I don't want to do this right now. On top of that, I will go to storage and create a new bucket. I will call this files. So this will be the place where we upload our files to from the React Native app. I don't want to make it public because only users should have access to their own files. And to make sure that the files are in fact safe, we're going to add a policy. Now, you can create policies from here. They're actually cool starting templates. So if you don't know what a policy is or how it works, these examples give you a really nice starting point. However, I figured this out, and the policy we want to use is something we can just do with the query editor. So I'm going to do a new blank query here and paste this in. So I want to create a policy on storage objects for everything. So read, update, create, update, delete. Using bucket ID files, and my auth ID should be equal to the folder name. So that means a user with the ID 123 can only access files under files/123. That's the idea that we can enable here, run this, And success, no rows returned. I always get scared when I read no rows returned, but if it's a success, it's a success. Okay, we got that, so let's continue. We got our app, and I think, yeah, I mean, we can start it right now with npx expo. So this will load our env file. We got those. Starting Metro Bundle. I'm gonna press I, so I want to run this on my iOS simulator. You can also, of course, use Android or also even web, but at some point web going to be challenging as we use the Expo Secure Store, which is only available on a device. Nonetheless, we're going to see the default now with the Expo router version 2. And there are a lot of files, and I don't really want this. I want to give you an easy example to follow in all cases. So we're going to do something radical. We're going to remove constants, components, and app. Just gonna remove everything, because I really want to show you how you can build this app up from the ground. If you're scared that don't you see anything, just create a new folder app, insert an index.tsx, React Native functional export, and then your screen is gonna be happy again with an index file, and you can hopefully sleep better if you drop out of the tutorial right now. But the most important part is now getting everything in order, and we're gonna start with the configuration. So let's create a new file, init supabase.ts, and within here we want to create the connection to Supabase. Now what we need is not this, but the create client function from Supabase. On top of that, we will also use the Expo Secure Store, because this will help us to persist the actual session of a user. So we can add this little adapter here, this adapter manager, which has a function to get an item, set an item, or remove an item, and then we can pass this to the initialization of Supabase. On top of that, we can now easily grab our keys from the process environments. So the Expo public, Supabase URL, Supabase ANN key, and then we can export the actual object. So export const Supabase using create client. Yes, URL and key will be defined. And then we can have some more options. So in many cases, it already stops here. But for React Native, we will now set the auth object in here and set detect session in URL to actually false. So this is something we have to do for React Native, otherwise we're gonna get into trouble. And then we're gonna set our own storage and use the Expo Secure Store adapter that we configured up here. And with those changes in place, Supabase will automatically use the secure storage, secure store for the session. So if a user signs in, this is handled and managed in the background, and we're easily able to plug this into the whole React Native and Expo ecosystem. So no problem at all. Cool. Let's continue with our index. So this is basically our login page. Maybe we can even call this login. Sounds cool, looks cool. There we go. Okay, so on the login, we of course need a bit of state. We need email, password, and probably also a loading state. And we need a functionality to sign in the user. So on sign in, we want to do something. And we also, of course, need to create the view. Now, as I said before, you can find all the code down below. So we're gonna rush a bit through creating the UI part here, because that's really somewhat boring and not super interesting. So I'm gonna add a few styles here. Style sheet, yeah, should be imported, but we can do this in a second. And on top of that, we're gonna update the imports up here to have some more stuff from React Native. Actually, we don't need that one really. And of course, Supabase and the loading spinner. Now, with those changes in place, we can create the actual view. We're gonna use this page to have both the sign up and the sign in on one page. That will just make life a bit easier. In your case, you can just create another file and then you can navigate to that, and then you can create your account from there. For now, that's all we need. So we got the two text inputs, we got a touchable for on sign in and for on sign up, and a bit of styling to make the text fields really look like they're really cool. The only thing that's kind of ugly are those borders. we should be able to overcome this by adding a new layout here. Let's try this out. Layout.tsx. And for the layout, let's try if we can just do like a root layout. Something, and then we want to return. Actually, I mean, we just want to return a slot, honestly. Let's see. Export default root layout. Would this make the app happy? Yeah, it's making you happy. I know the right buttons to press. Good. All right, here we go. This is the login. We just need to hook this up to the actual login functionality. And the Supabase SDK comes with all the functionality. Actually, one more thing I see. Since Expo 49, we can do something like this. Isn't that cool? Yeah, it is, I think. So those are our alias. This is set up in the tsconfig file, which defines that at the top level, we can just have an add and we don't need these ugly relative path anymore. All right, on sign, what do I want to use? Let's start here. So on sign up, we want to set loading to true. And then we're gonna do the sign up with Supabase, which is just using auth.signup, and I'm passing in the email and password. Now, if we do get an error, I just want to use the alert. Yeah, error signing up, and then error message should be fine. And finally, set loading false. Actually, what was that? Else alert sign up successful. Also, that sounds nice. Yeah. Yeah, we just need sign up successful. I don't think we need anything else. Let's see. I will also just add my testing. So this makes testing a lot easier if you just put in your own stuff here during testing. So these will be my settings. Let's try to create an account. Sign up successful. And if I do it again, error signing up, user already registered. Perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to see. Now I can copy part of this. Basically only just the set loading. And we can use now, guess what? Sign in with password. And sign in with password, of course, also requires email and password. But if there's an error, actually we could have left that. Error signing in. So if we got an error here, let's try the error case first. Signing in, okay, invalid credentials. And otherwise, we should actually get back an account, or at least we should not get back an error. So we're now signed in. The information we get is not super relevant. It's not relevant here because we will now go a step further and add a context to our application. So we can do this. Let's do a new folder. We're cool kids and structure our app in a great way. So provider goes here. And then we're going to call this the auth provider.tsx. What an epic name, isn't it? In this file, we will create a context for our application, and we're going to listen to the state of the Supabase session. So we use the Supabase SDK, we listen. If we got a user, we're going to update the state. If we don't have a user, we update it. And by doing this, we can then wrap it around our application and use it as a little hook in the different parts, like the token, the user, the session, in the rest of our application. So it really makes life a lot easier. Let's do this. I'm going to do this one by one. So we start by adding a little type and then defining the context with partial of those types. So that helps us to initialize it correctly. If I really remove this, TypeScript will be not very happy with you. Then we can also export this as a little hook, so that makes it easier once we want to import the stuff. And finally, we're gonna create the actual auth provider. Now, this one's following a very common theme for adding authentication to your app. We have the use effect, which runs once in the beginning. That's why we have the empty array here. And once in the beginning, we're going to set up this auth state listener. And we'll also correctly unsubscribe if this is removed. Now, on auth state change of Supabase, we get an event and a session. Event is not so important in our case, but the session is. So we're going to set this to our state and also the user in case we want to load some data from there. And we also set initialized. This will be important in a second because when you start the app, the app is not initialized, and you maybe or maybe not, it's like Schrödinger's cat, you might have a user or might not. It's an async call to get the session of a user, and I don't want to do any kind of routing before the session is actually there, before we looked into the box and looked if Schrödinger's cat is actually alive or not. So this is like, I should call it like Schrödinger's cat or something. So this is it. Additionally, we have a little sign out, and then we add everything as a value to our provider. And now we can go to the topmost layout file in our app. So this is how it works with the Expo router. And we're gonna wrap this within our auth provider. So auth provider, and could you please just do the relative imports? That would be so cool if you just did this automatically, because I'm a cool kid. Damn. So I will do another initial layout now. And in this initial layout, I will do some more stuff. I'm doing this because then we can actually access our hook as well. So we'll just do this, and probably you're gonna have some other providers here, so that it makes sense. Yes, this one needs to return something. So now you're happy, right? So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna check. We're gonna get a few imports first of all. So we're gonna use the Expo router. We're gonna use the router and the use segments hook, because we're gonna get different segments of our path. Now, this is the empty path, this is just slash. But if I now create new folders and new files, because we're using file-based routing with the Expo router version 2, this is basically the path to a certain component or page. And if I put brackets around this, I can just group different pages, and this auth part won't actually appear in the URL, which is pretty cool. So I can then have like a list.tsx in here. Yeah, let's call this list. And then I could navigate to /list simply. But the thing is, I want to protect everything that is in this auth folder. So I could also have like an outside folder, which is public, but everything inside this auth folder should be protected. And we're gonna add the protection as well, but we also add a check here. So with session and initialized, we're gonna add a use effect block. And if we're not initialized, I can just simply return here, because then there's nothing for us to do. On the other hand, I also want to check if we are in this auth group. So I can check the first segment and see, okay, is the user currently trying to navigate to something in the auth group? And now based on that, I can add a little redirection logic. So if we do have a session, which we grab from the context, and we're navigating to something that's not in the auth group, like login, register, or any outside page, we can actually directly take the user to the inside page, right? Because that's how you do it. Otherwise, the user reopens the app after a time, he has a valid session or she, and is just on the login screen. So we can do a better job. On the other hand, if our session at any point changes, we're gonna route directly back to this. We could actually add, if we don't have a session, and we're in auth group, that would also kind of make sense. So with that in place, we just need to return a slot. So that will just render everything else, all the other layouts and files of our application. And now we see, I think we are actually on the list page, because there is something up there, I just can't see it correctly. And if I want to see this correctly, I will just add a new layout file in here. Layout.tsx, and in this layout file I'm going to define the layout for the inside area. So what I want to have is a simple stack layout, and within the stack layout we can, but we don't have to, define the different pages. So I only have this one page named list. I want to add the header title, and I will also add a button to the header right. And then let's see, here we go. My files, we got the logout button up here, which is simply accessing the sign out, and we know we're children of the context, so we can use it in here. And that's actually all we have to say about this. There's one other thing that we could do. So we could also have a redirect here. So in case we don't have a session, we could add a redirect. That one also further protect this page. But nonetheless, we should be able now to get to that page. And with that, we have already finished the first part of this tutorial, which was authentication. We kind of didn't really notice, but I can now sign out. I'm brought back to this page because of these lines. So session changed in our context. We're reacting to this and replacing the router going here. And if I sign in, session changes, I'm still outside and I'm brought to the inside area, which is pretty nice and pretty cool actually. Sometimes you just need to take like a little moment and think about, oh, that's pretty cool what I've been able to implement without actually writing backend code. So thank you Supabase once again for this. You should also, by the way, be able to check out your users under authentication. So there you're gonna find the user account. Great. Now, the next step is the actual file upload, which is going to be interesting as well. So let's go to our list page and let's set up the base. Let's set up the stage for our application. I'm going to add a few imports, so those will probably come in naturally for you once you do this. But what I want to do is I want to access the user and I want to create a state with an array of file objects. Now, why do I want to do this? Simply because we can now create a function, let's call this load images, which would load our images in the beginning. And to load the images in the beginning, we know that we can use effect and make this dependent on the user. So just to be really sure that we are only loading the images in case we do have a user. I'm going to put in a little to do here because we actually can't really load the images from Supabase yet, as we haven't uploaded anything. So in order to upload, let's add a bit of styling. So this will help us to create a fab button. A fab button is a floating action button, and this floating action button should now appear at the bottom of our view. On top of that, we can already prepare the onSelectImage function, and then we have this nice and clean view. So nice dark background, a button here that really nice. Nice styling copilot, I like that. Which will allow us to call a function. Now, nothing of this is really special yet, so that's why I've been basically skipping over it. Now things get more interesting as we integrate the Expo image picker. So to pick some images, we can now define a few options and then call the image picker launch image library async, or you could also launch the camera async. However, I'm using the simulator, so I can't really launch the camera, but both things would work. As a result, we should be able to click this and capture an image. Oh no, I shouldn't put this into load images. Load images is not that's why it triggered automatically. That makes sense, yeah. So I can now select an image here, I can edit it and zoom into this and select it. And as a result, I would get a URI back. So let's probably log this out. Let's log result.assets. What is it? Assets, result, assets, I think at index 0. This is the image, and that should be .URI. Right, let's try. We should probably check if not cancelled. So if not result cancelled, we can continue. And cancel, this is not how you spell it. Copilot, I don't know what you're getting wrong there. Anyway, let's try. So I'm gonna select an image. And voila. This is a file. So a file URI to some local file. How do we upload this file from a URI to Supabase? Well, there are different options. First of all, in most cases, this works somewhat similar to how you would upload to your own API. So if you're not using Supabase, this will also work mostly the same for a different API. But if you want to do this with Supabase, there is the basic way, and then I want to tell you about something else, which is pretty interesting as well. Let's get started. The basic way would be to access the image, then load the base64 string using the read string, using the file system package from Expo and the image URI, then creating the file path, which will be user ID. So this is the file path later on in the Supabase bucket. So user ID / new date and the image type. and then the content type, and then just calling supabase.storage.from. Now selecting the storage bucket. In our case, there was files, and then calling upload. Using the file path, the decode function with a base64 string, and then the content type. And we're gonna follow this up by load images so we can update our state. Now, this is the basic way how we can do this in a straightforward way with just a few lines. But there's one more thing I want to talk about, and that is resumable uploads. Now, this has been around with Supabase for quite some time now. And I came very close to finishing an example using API, which is something Supabase recommended here as well, I think. Yes, here it is with API. So my code looked somewhat like this. You can actually see this in the GitHub repository in an early commit. However, this wasn't working 100% with React Native yet. So API doesn't really have React Native support in a great way. Yes, I've been able to use it with a hook. I've been able to add files to it, and I've been able to trigger all these functions and start an upload. And I actually uploaded something to Supabase storage, which I was able to put in as the upload URL. So all of that was really cool, but the files were always 0 bytes. So something clearly went wrong with API, of API not being able to actually read the content of my URIs or my files. However, Supabase does support this and implements this, so you can have resumable uploads for storage. On the web, you won't have any problem implementing this with API. On React Native, I haven't been able to get this done. I hope to show you an example of this in the near future, and I'm sure the Supabase team will take steps to realize this and make this possible with API over the next time. Just wanted to tell you that there are resumable uploads that is possible with Supabase storage, and I'm pretty sure it will be possible with React Native in the future. Now, back to our use case. In my use case here, we have the files bucket, which should be empty. So let's try and select the file now. I'm gonna go into really deep here, and it's hopefully uploaded. So let's reload, and there it is. User folder created, file created, image uploaded. Yes, there we go. It is there, right there. Nice. We could have also used like image transformation on the fly. Supabase also has the image transformation on storage now. Or is it only for download? I think maybe it's only for download or upload, but you can check this out as well. That would be a nice addition as well. Speaking of additions, we are not yet loading or showing images. So let's change this. Actually, loading images is really like ridiculously easy. The only thing we have to do is call the list function on the right bucket, and again using the user's own folder, and then we have our data here. Now I could just do a little log here, so then you would see load images data, blah blah blah, created, blah blah blah, but I want to display this, and to display this I need to download it. And to download it, I want to restructure my app a tiny bit, because otherwise it's gonna be just ugly and spaghetti code. So I'm gonna add a new file here. I'm gonna do this new file components. I'm gonna call this image item.tsx. So components image item, and this image item will simply receive the actual item, a user ID, and an onRemove image function. So I don't want to remove the image in the actual component, because then I need to update the state and everything gets ugly. So I want to pass this up, and then the parent component can take care of that. Besides that, the image item will simply download from files /user ID /item name, and then use the file reader to get a base64 string, which I set as my image. And then it's simply an item which has a flex layout, an image, text, and a button to remove this. So I should be able to save all of this, and with a bit of luck, yeah, we're not yet using it. Yeah, that makes sense. So going back to my list, I should now implement a little scroll view something up here. So let's do this, and let's add the image item. No, still not getting the import right. This is how the cool kids do it. This is how they do it, and this is it. But now we got it. Awesome. But I think there's one thing missing. So we're able to pass in the ID of an item, which is basically the ID of the file, the actual file, the user ID, which we got from the context. But we also need to implement this onRemoveImage function. And this one's once again pretty easy. So let's quickly add this up here. This will simply call the remove function on our bucket. We have to construct the path like this with an array of components. I just put it into one string. It doesn't really matter too much. Once again, user ID, name of the file, and then I'm going to update my local files. So with all of that in place, let's put it together one more time. And let's start fresh from the outside area with a big application here in... I really hate to resize this emulator. It never really works like I want. Okay, let's do this. I'm able to create an account. I'm able to sign in with a great loading spinner. I should be able to select a random image or capture it, pick it, upload it, see it in the folder of the user on Supabase and also in my app. And I should also be able to remove the file with a click here, which updates Supabase storage as well and removes the image from my storage bucket. So here we got it, the full finished working example. And actually, I think it wasn't too hard. Yes, we brought in some code to speed up the process, but overall, it's really super easy to use Supabase with React Native. As we've seen, Supabase storage, you just need list, download, upload, or delete. It's a super clean API. And also for Supabase authentication, we have the on-auth state change, the sign out, or on our login page, we had sign in and sign up. So a really clean interface that you can use, and it works perfectly with React Native. All right, and that's it for today's tutorial. I hope you enjoyed this. I think this is a really easy and straightforward way to upload your files, to upload any kind of user-generated content. We've only seen it with image and the image picker, but could be videos, could be other files. It doesn't really matter. Supabase storage will be happy to serve all your files. Once again, thank you Supabase for sponsoring this video. Go check it out. Link to the code and the written tutorial right below this video, and I will hopefully catch you in the next one. So until then, happy coding, Simon.